So we're recording. Sorry about the poor picture quality. I can't get my external webcam to work, but I just wanted to record a quick video to let you know about an event I went to this morning. So I was invited to an event by my old mentor, who is a dietitian very well known in the field of celiac disease, she invited me to a breakfast, and it was sponsored by Dietitian, which is the company that makes Glutaguard. So Glutaguard is an enzyme therapy that has been approved by the TGA for reducing symptoms in the event of incidental or accidental gluten ingestion. So a lot of people have been asking questions about this supplement recently, and some people have started taking it every time they eat out. I'm very interested in this product, and that's why I went along to this breakfast. But at the end of the presentation, it was being suggested that we, as dietitians, should recommend this supplement to all of our celiac patients who take risks when they're eating out. And by that I mean, oh yes, you order gluten-free without asking questions, or you eat chips from a shed fryer and that sort of thing. So it was recommended that we should tell our patients with celiac disease that if they fall into that high risk category, that we should be blanketly recommending this supplement. And I put my hand up. It was very stressful for me to do this, but I put my hand up in this meeting and I said, I disagree. I do not believe that this supplement should be blanketly recommended to people with celiac disease. It's Coeliac Australia currently don't recommend this supplement at all. They say we don't recommend it, and the reason they don't is because they're worried that people with celiac disease might just think, oh, I can just take this supplement and then I can go out and eat whatever I want. Okay, so in the clinical trials, this supplement has been shown to be able to degrade up to 1 gram of gluten, and it has demonstrated, they were able to demonstrate that it did reduce symptoms for people that were taking 1 gram of gluten a day. But because of just due to the methodology in the study and having a few dropouts in the placebo group, they weren't able to demonstrate that it reduced intestinal damage for people. Okay, so they're not allowed to make a claim that it protects against intestinal damage, and this is the thing that we're most concerned about in people with celiac disease. So they're able to say that it reduces symptoms. So what they are currently saying is that this supplement may be able to help people that are worried about a risk of gluten contamination getting into their diet. Okay, but the reason I don't and would never blanketly recommend this supplement for people is because I would never recommend a supplement that I didn't think was necessary. Okay, so the evidence hasn't been able to demonstrate that this supplement can prevent intestinal damage, and if it did, we would be having a whole different conversation. Like, this would be a really good thing, but they haven't been able to. So all they can say is that it reduces symptoms. Now, the reason I put my hand up in front of this room full of dietitians and said, I don't think this is good I don't think it's ethical, this product being recommended at a blanket level to all people with celiac disease, there's a few reasons why. So the first is that we don't know how people are going to perceive this medicine, whether they think, I don't have to be as careful with the gluten-free diet if I'm taking this. So I'll just take this pill every time I go out and I won't have to worry about, about gluten getting into my diet. That's not what we want. And it was stressed that we do need to tell our clients, you need to still maintain a strict gluten-free diet. This pill is just a just in case. But the other thing to think about is that, there are lots of people on the gluten-free diet with celiac disease at the moment who have recovered in full. Their villi are nice and healthy. They don't have any symptoms anymore. Their blood tests are showing that their antibodies have come down. And so it's all a really good sign that they're doing really well on a gluten-free diet. Those people do not need to all of a sudden start taking this enzyme every time they eat out. And this is the message that I am against. It's not a cheap supplement. It's over $1 per tablet, and you need to take one for every hour that you're eating risky food. Okay, so that can get quite expensive if you're a person that eats out a lot. It's also, I think, some dietitians were saying, oh, my clients have taken it and it was good for their anxiety. They didn't feel as anxious about eating out because they knew they had this protecting them. And I can understand that. However, what we need to do is educate our patients and our clients about about the actual risk when you're eating out. And does eating out necessarily expose you to an amount of gluten that is damaging for you every time you eat out? And, the answer to that is something we don't actually have evidence for. But if you're showing healthy signs of recovery, and you've had a follow-up biopsy that shows you're doing well, you're recovering, your villi are getting back to normal, you're not having symptoms anymore, then I don't want people to think that they need to pay to have this expensive supplement every time they eat out. Okay, it's probably completely unnecessary in those cases. Where it might be a good idea is where people are maybe going on an overseas trip to somewhere like Japan, where it might be more difficult to find a gluten-free meal, and this is a short-term. Sorry, my cat is throwing his head off. So this is a short-term thing where they're going overseas and they just want a little bit of extra peace of mind that they're not going to get sick when they're going out or get glutened. That's a time when I would recommend taking this supplement with them. Another case where I might recommend it is for people who are extremely sensitive to small amounts of gluten. Okay, now if you're a person who has diagnosed celiac disease, but you have shown recovery, so your villi are looking okay. However, every time you eat out, you manage to get sick because you're very, very sensitive to gluten. Now, this doesn't happen to everyone. It's definitely on a bell curve, and some people are extremely sensitive in that way. Then it's possible that this supplement might enable them to have more options for their social life. Okay, so if you are a person that can't eat out at all because you're anxious about getting sick because you have been sick on multiple occasions when you're eating out from what's likely to be a very small amount of gluten, then this is another case where I would perhaps recommend this supplement just to enable certain people with celiac disease to open up their social life and increase their quality of life. So those are the two cases where I would, as a dietitian, suggest that this supplement might be of use. I do not want to see people with celiac disease told that they have to take this supplement every time they eat out to reduce their background gluten intake. And the reason for this is that there's no such thing as a 100% gluten-free diet. Ever since the gluten-free diet was introduced, most people have reduced the majority of gluten, but there is a background intake that we know happens. There is a small amount of gluten, probably under 10 milligrams, but perhaps more. And some people don't have active celiac disease on that amount of gluten, and they do fine. And their risk of bowel cancer and other adverse health effects is reduced dramatically or almost to zero. So we know that this background gluten intake occurs, and we know that most people probably are able to deal with that amount and not have adverse health effects. But if you all of a sudden start taking this supplement every time you eat out and zapping every last skerrick of gluten that makes its way into your diet, how do you know that you're not going to then make yourself more sensitive symptomatically to gluten in the future? So you could possibly be a person who can tolerate tiny amounts of gluten. Remember me, there's no such thing as a 100% gluten-free diet. Gluten makes its way into our diet, whether we're on the strictest gluten-free diet or not. Okay, this has been shown in studies. So gluten makes its way in every now and then if we eat out. Sometimes we might get 1 or 2 crumbs, and most people still do okay on that, meaning they don't have any symptoms and they don't appear to have any intestinal damage. Okay, so they clear up completely. However, if we all of a sudden try to reduce that gluten, that residual gluten intake to 0, then what happens when you stop taking the supplement? Once you stop taking that supplement, all of a sudden you'll become hypersensitive to gluten because you're not used to that tiny residual gluten intake anymore. Yeah. So you'll become a person, well, this is my theory. And again, we don't have enough research on this, but my theory is that you'll become hypersensitive to gluten, and that if you even get a single crumb of gluten on your plate, you'll become extremely ill. And there are people like that react that way. At the moment, you might just get a little bit of stomach gurgling or a little bit of reflux. But if you try to reduce your gluten intake to absolute 0, you're only going to make yourself more sensitive symptomatically to gluten. Okay, so I do not believe, and I strongly do not recommend that you take this supplement unless you fall into those 2 categories that I mentioned. One, you're going to a new situation, you're doing a trip or going overseas to a country where you don't feel confident in being able to express your gluten-free requirements or get a gluten-free meal. You might like to take this supplement before every meal that you have on that short trip. And secondly, if you're a person who has to limit their social life because every time they eat out, they seem to get sick from gluten. Those are the only 2 situations where I recommend this supplement might be of use. But otherwise, please don't think that because you have celiac disease, you need to start taking this supplement. It could do worse in the long run for you. Okay, so that's my 2 cents, and I'd like to know if you agree. Okay, that's it for me.